Hello, my name is Osha. We are 24 days into the US Israeli Iran war. By the way, I'm not going to talk about the Iran war today. I want to talk about a woman called Alice Paul in honor of Women's History Month. If nobody knows Alice Paul, she's inducted into I think, the Women's Hall of Fame. But she was crucial to the passing of the 19th Amendment in 1920, which was ratified in 1920, which gave women the vote. Right, it prohibited discrimination against uh, women's voting rights, and also she's very crucial in the inclusion of gender in the anti-discrimination laws that protected various classes, including women, in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So Alice Paul was a very significant person, and something I actually want to focus on today was her education, her erudition. It was highly unusual for those times. And even today, she had about 6 degrees. She had two doctorates. And she was born in 1885. She was born in 1885. Um, but I'm just going to quickly talk about, give an update regarding events that are happening now with respect to the Iran war. So there was a ceasefire, a 5 day ceasefire declared by President Trump because President Trump had given Iran an ultimatum in lifting its strangleholds, its blockade of the Hormuz, um, the Strait of Hormuz, which through which 20% of the world's oil passes. Iran responded, in defiance, because President Trump threatened um, to bomb, to destroy um, Iran's energy infrastructure, its power grids, and Iran, responded in defiance, saying, well, that they're going to retaliate in kind, and they would not lift the blockade. In any event, President Trump then, issued a notice saying, um, piece of a communique saying that he had had positive talks with Iran, and he was suspending the he was going to have a 5 day ceasefire. He was suspending the the impending attack on Iran's energy infrastructure and removing the 48-hour ultimatum he'd given. Uh, Iran, however, responded saying no such talks occurred and they're not engaging in a ceasefire. But the effects of of President Trump's announcement was that the stock market, which had been plummeting, plummeted about 10%, up 10% since February, especially after the Iran war, suddenly went back up a little bit. It gained 631 points. And so the Dow, which had gone under 46,000 yesterday, was now over 46,000 again, roughly about 46,000, 208 points, thereabouts, roughly. But it gained 631 points. And the price of oil that had been approaching 120, that had gone up, dropped roughly 10%, right? So it's now under $100 a barrel. It's about $99 a barrel, thereabouts. So you can see how the stock market responds to the war. So investors don't want the war, clearly. Yes, there are probably some certain stocks that might go up, like defense stocks, right? Because if we are in a full-blown war, then they're going to start investing. There's going to be more military production of military parts and things like that. And so uh, investors might want to start buying might want to start investing in um, those sorts of companies, defense companies, and things like that. By the way, um, this is not financial advice. I used to be a financial advisor, a stockbroker, so ages ago. So this sort of interested me. I left, the industry when I was under 35 years old, when I was on, long time ago, because I wanted to pursue something else. So you can see um, how information, right, news of uh, geopolitical events, positive or negative, how it affects investors and the stock market, right? So you can see how that works. By the way, there's an Iranian American, very credible Iranian American podcaster who says she's a news person rather. She says that uh, the information disseminated by President Trump was probably just intended to improve the markets, to have an impact on on the markets, and which it did, right? Instantly, it immediately had an impact. But how do I tie this in to my discussion today on women's history and Alice Paul? Alice Paul, who had so many university degrees. Um, so she obtained her first bachelor's degree when she was 20 years old, right? When she was 20 years old. This was in 1905. um, from Swarthmore College. She got a bachelor's, a BS in biology. By the way, Swarthmore College was founded by her grandfather, and Alice Paul, I guess, what aided her ability to garner all those university degrees that men didn't even have, right? Was the fact that she came from a wealthy, right, upper class American family. Her She was a descendant of William Penn. William Penn, who was the founder of the state of Pennsylvania. Of course, the King of England, Charles II, had given Pennsylvania to her ancestor, another Sir William Penn, Sir Admiral Sir William Penn, to pay off a debt, right? So he had given it to William Penn, actually, the son, because the King of England owed money, right, to the father of William Penn. So he gave that, Pennsylvania as the whole, all the lands of the lands territory of Pennsylvania to William Penn, the ancestor of Alice Paul, to pay off a debt. So I guess it's helpful if you want to garner so many university degrees. One way to be able to do that is to have rich ancestors, or And interestingly, her ancestor William Penn is also the founder of University of Pennsylvania. Um, so she at the time she got her bachelor's degree, her bachelor's degree in 1905, right, when she was 20 years old. Only 2%, less than 2% of Americans had bachelor's degrees, right? Of just 2% of all Americans had bachelor's degrees. For women, of course, of all the people who had bachelor's degrees, less than 20% were possessed by women, right? So back then, this was 1905, in the 1900s. So I went to check the data on things. According to the Census Bureau, in contrast, US Census Bureau today, and Pew Research, by contrast, today, as of 2025, 60% of all university bachelor's degrees held by people over 25, right, up to 34. That's between the ages of 25 to 34. 60% of all bachelor's degrees are held by women. So women have outpaced men in holding bachelor's degrees. So compared to, back then in '05 when Alice Paul obtained her, her bachelor's degree. When Alice Paul obtained her bachelor's degree in America in 1905, um, less than 20% of all degrees held by held in bachelor's degrees held in America were held by women. Right, women's proportion was just 19% in 1905 compared to 2025. In 2025, women have the majority, 60% of bachelor's degrees. Now, the reason why I was going to connect this to my role as as a stockbroker, before I was the age of 35 years old, before I was 34, because that was when I left the industry, right? Um, so the trend is women are obtaining more degrees than men in America. They're obtaining more bachelor's degrees. They're getting going to college more than men in this contemporary era. But we shouldn't misrepresent the data. So the data that people look at, the comparison data, right? The data points between the ages of 25 to 34 or under 34, that is a period when men are risk takers, right? They're high risk takers. Now, if you go to business school, you understand one of the qualities of becoming an entrepreneur is that you're a risk taker, right? You don't settle for security because an entrepreneur is the one who puts resources together, factors of production together, and he takes the risk and invests his money, his time, it should be able to make profit, right? And that his idea, his business is going to be successful, right? So they forego security, right? The security of earning a salary working for somebody. So they're bigger risk takers. That's men, and especially men under 34. The reason I point this out is because of my experience. So I already had at least two degrees. I had an MBA, I had a major in accounting, I had another bachelor's degree. By the time I'd worked for years at a bank, at least given several years at a bank, and I had been promoted. In fact, I had just been promoted to go and run a trading desk. But I looked at the trade-off that, okay, if I keep this secure position now, I would not have the opportunity to do other things I was interested in, right? So I was a stockbroker then, but I left before I was 35 years old and to go and pursue another interest, something I was passionate about, because I knew that if I traded, something I wouldn't be able to get back was my time. And I knew at that age, right, before I was 34 years old, before I was, I was very I had not just ambition, but I had a larger appetite for risk, right? I had a larger appetite for risk, and I wanted to take the chance to pursue my goals, my interest, because I kept thinking that I probably wouldn't have the opportunity, the energy, or the ability to pursue my goals much later on, right? So that's one factor that people should consider when they're looking at the data points comparing the acquisition of university degrees, uh, you know, in comparative terms between men and women, right? So women in contemporary times they're acquiring degrees more than men, but we forget the fact that men are probably, the age that they look at, men and women under 34 years old, that's when people are more likely to take risk and go and be entrepreneurs, for instance. Bill Gates doesn't have a college degree. He dropped out of college, right? He never earned his college degree. He dropped out of college from Harvard because he started a business while he was in college. Even I, before coming to America, even though I had the security of my parents paying for my education, my bachelor's, I started a business when I was young in Nigeria, right? Very early. Um, Throughout my time in America, I always worked and went to school, right? And because there was this energy. When I think about it, that the energy I had back then, I worked, went to school. When I had my first MBA, I graduated with that without debt. When I got my MBA, in America, I was able to obtain it without debt, right? Because I was very, I had the energy, I was enterprising that back then, right? I didn't use a school loan, a student loan to be able to do that. So, um, so that's something that, while it's very impressive that women have surpassed men in acquiring college degrees in America, we shouldn't dismiss other factors that's probably causing men that influences men to forego college education, particularly considering the huge cost of college, right? So one of the factors of production and right, that we have to consider apart from money, capital, right? It costs money to go to college. But something else is time. Time is a redeemable resource, right? If you think of your time as involving opportunity cost, right? The time you spend doing activity A means you cannot engage in activity B. So the time young men are spending in college, it means that they can't devote their time and all their resources and attention into engaging in that startup. Mark Zuckerberg, right, the billionaire founder of Facebook, he was in college at Harvard. He founded Facebook while he was Harvard, and he dropped out. He never finished his bachelor's degree. There are so many people like that. Steve Jobs started Apple. He didn't have a college degree. He was a billionaire, right? Founder of Apple. So you see so many things that you know, uh, so many activities, entrepreneurial activities that young men of college age engage in that might be causing them to give up college, right? So it's not that they're just sitting down doing nothing. And of course, when they become successful, um, they end up employing people who have college degrees, right? Mark Zuckerberg's wife, it's funny, I think she's a medical doctor. She has several covered college degrees. He doesn't have any. I'm not counting honorary doctorates, right? An honorary doctorate is not an earned degree. It's not the same thing. They give you a university awards you an honorary degree in terms of your accomplishments to society, or if you've given them money, right? So they'll give you an honorary degree. Some of them you can actually buy them. It's not the same thing as one you earned, right? Uh, from passing exams and attending courses. So, and by the way, many young people start businesses, but majority of them probably fail. It's a risk, right? So not everybody's going to turn out like Mark Zuckerberg, right? But there are many young people who forego college to start successful businesses. 70% of companies that start off in America, startups in America, 70% of them fail within a few short years that they've started, right? So um, just to put that out there. So at that age, that's uh, the period that's being compared. I, for instance, gave up security because I wanted to pursue something else, right? I had a very secure job as a stockbroker at a major bank, one of the biggest banks, but I gave it up to go and pursue an interest that was going to help me in entrepreneurial activities, right? Being a lawyer, I wanted to go to law school. If you have a law degree, you can do anything with it, right? You can start your law firm, you can do a variety of things. And so it was in line with my goals and my ambitions. So I just wanted to point that out. Now I have several degrees, right? I don't know if I don't have as many as, well, I have a lot of courses, but we're gonna look at Alice Paul. So I'm very impressed with her, uh, with her, um, with her accomplishments. I don't have as many degrees as she has actually. She has two doctoral degrees, right? Two doctoral degrees. And I'll list them out, which is rather interesting. And she had to sacrifice a lot of things to accomplish these things, right? So I'm going to break this video up into several parts and discuss her background, first of all, her education, and then I will, in a subsequent video, I'll discuss what it is she did. So she was Alice Paul was responsible for voting, right? For women being able to. She was a suffragette, That's what they call them, suffragette, right? A suffragist, right? Suffrage has to do with voting. So she was instrumental in the passing of the 19th Amendment, which gave American women the vote in 1920. Um, Now, prior to that, let me just give her background, her bio. And it's interesting that she gave up a lot. She never married, right? She never married. She died at 92. She was a vegetarian, um, but I'm sure she didn't lack suitors because uh, the men are. I've heard many women complain that men do not like intelligent women, right? So there are women who downplay their intelligence. I don't. Maybe there are men who don't, but there are other men who do, who are drawn to women's intelligence. Um, there's actually an English word for that. It's called sapiosexual, right? So a man who's attracted to women's intelligence um, is that's highly intelligent. Women is said to be a sapiophile, right? A sapiophile. If somebody called me a sapiophile, for instance, maybe they wouldn't be far off the mark, right? But this is not about me. But there are men who are attracted to women who are highly intelligent. So it's not true that all men uh, despise or shun women who are very intelligent. And why should a woman really care about what a man thinks of her? The men who are drawn to women because they are noble or they are religious, they're devout, right? Because of their character. So there are different reasons why people are drawn to women. But it's interesting that she was very passionate and devoted to the cause of obtaining women's rights and the vote for women. And so she gave up. She never married. She never married. So back to her biography, and I'll break this up into several videos, as I said. So she obtained her first degree in 1905 from Swarthmore College. Interesting, her grandfather co-founded Swarthmore College, right? Swarthmore College is still famous today. She earned a Bachelor of Science in biology. She didn't want to be a teacher. Back then, you know, uh, women hardly got education, got an education, and when they did, the only option was usually to go and teach. So she decided to move somewhere in New York, and she started initially in social work. That was the only other alternative for women. And she saw that she hated it. In her diary, in her journals, she wrote that, and her statement, she said that social workers didn't do anything. They didn't achieve anything. They didn't create change. So she moved to, before she moved to England, she actually uh, obtained further education, right? She got a master's degree in she got a master's degree in social work and economics, right? In sociology and economics, and from uh, University of Pennsylvania, which her ancestor founded. Her ancestor William Penn. William Penn was a founder of the University of Pennsylvania. So she moved to England, and in England she continued her education at the University of Birmingham, studying economics, taking courses, and she took courses at London School of Economics. She took sociology courses at a university at another Quaker center in England. But she was not just taking school, and she continued to do work in social work as she was taking courses in England. And she got herself arrested several times because she joined a militant suffrage group in England. And so she was arrested for various demonstrations, protests, but she was protesting, advocating for women's rights, right? So she got arrested several times. She was arrested on three different occasions and spent time in jail on three different occasions for her um, demonstrations concerning women's rights. So she became after um, the passage of the 19th Amendment, she got heavily involved um, in what's called the Equal Rights Amendment. And interestingly, by the way, I took a gender class, a feminist class, women's history class while I was at Columbia University. So I'd actually learned about Alice Walker. I wrote about her. So that was a very long time ago. I wrote about her. Her life was very interesting to me. I wrote about, I read, studied a lot about early women who were involved in this Equal Rights Amendment, Equal Rights Act. That was what they were looking for. They were trying to create an amendment to give women equality, to guarantee women equality in the U.S. Constitution. So, so she returns to America because she's been in England and she'd been locked up several times for her demonstrations and activities in the women's suffrage movement in England. So she returns to America and continues her education. She goes on to get a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania in sociology. And then she also later on, when she was in her late 30s, she didn't give up. She continued. She decided after women got the right to vote, she now started to study law the at American University in DC. Right, American University. Yes, they still have a very good law program. In fact, one of my a professor from my school where I got my degree from George Washington University. He had recently been the dean of the College of Law at American University. Right, his name was Professor Fairfax. His wife was so it was like a husband and wife duo who taught at my school at George Washington University. His wife had taught me corporate law. His wife was a classmate of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first Black American to be uh, a justice, first Black American woman to be a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. Right, we call U.S. Supreme Court SCOTUS, right, as an acronym. So she's the first Black woman, and so Professor Lisa Fairfax was a classmate of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in Harvard. They both went to Harvard Law School and Harvard undergraduates. They had been roommates, they were friends. So they're both double Harvard. And Professor Lisa Fairfax was one who gave testimony, with character witness testimony, right, commending Justice Justice Brown Jackson during her confirmation hearings. And Professor Lisa Fairfax is the wife of Professor Roger Fairfax, who was briefly, who was a dean of the law school at American University. And it's interesting that uh, Alice Paul obtained several law degrees from American University. So she obtained her LLB, that's Bachelor of Laws, uh, in America prior to them awarding what's called the Juris Doctor, the Doctor of Law. Prior to them changing the system, they would award the Bachelor of Laws degree. So she obtained an LLB, and then she obtained an LLM, that's a Master of Law, right, in from American University, and then she obtained a Doctor of Civil Law as well, right? So she was done with all these three degrees by the time she was about 43 years old. She actually enrolled in two different law schools simultaneously so she could speed it up. So she acquired a lot of education, and her education helped her in her advocacy and her work for women's rights, equal women's rights in America. I'm going to continue my discussion. I want to keep it under 30 minutes. Yes, I'm talking about education. Not everybody can acquire all the education that Alice Paul acquired. Um, and, hopefully, the world has changed, at least America. It's been organized in such a way that you need an education, a bachelor's educate degree, a formal education to be able to do certain jobs. Back during Abraham Lincoln's time, right? Abraham Lincoln never had any degree. He hardly saw the four walls of the school, but he qualified and became a lawyer, an attorney, and a very able attorney because back then you didn't need a college degree, a university degree to become a lawyer, right? So Abraham Lincoln found law books, he studied them, he passed the bar exam, and then you serve in you article or you serve in the law under a licensed attorney in his law office, right? So that's how they did it back then. But things have changed now. You can't become a lawyer in America without having at least a bachelor's degree and then having a law degree. So you need at least 7 years of education if you want to be an attorney in America, right? And then you take the bar exam. So, but back then, Alice Paul's accomplishments were very remarkable because, again, only um, less than 20% of women had bachelor's degree in 1905 in America back then. Less than 20% of women. Things have changed drastically now. Of course, 60% of all bachelor's degrees held in America for women over 25 are held by women, right? And women are uh, at least 47% of women over 25 in America have a bachelor's degree. That's in contrast to men. For men between the ages of 25 under 34, 36% of men have a bachelor's degree. So women are reading drastically at higher rates, are getting degrees drastically at higher rates than men. But it doesn't mean men are just sitting down watching television and playing video games or whatever it is that they do. Men may be starting businesses because there's a pattern. That age is a very again, uh, it's a high risk taking age for young men, right? And women are more likely to be risk averse. So men are probably uh, pursuing entrepreneurial uh, adventures, right? Uh, During that age in which the opportunity cost would be a college degree because education has become very expensive, right? The cost of college can buy you a home, right? It can buy you a home today. The cost of college, certain university degrees, that is, if you go to an Ivy League, it's equivalent to the cost of buying a home. A law degree, definitely, you can buy a home with what it costs to obtain a law degree today. If you go to certain law schools like George Washington University Law School, you could graduate with a debt of $400,000, right? Just from law school. Prior to law school, of course, you need a bachelor's degree. If you add the debt from your bachelor's degree, we're looking at an education of over $600,000, right? Six hundred to $800,000. This is very, very expensive. So many men might be giving up, that and looking at the opportunity cost, to be able to divert those resources and time, the redeemable resource, and channeling that into entrepreneurial ventures and starting successful businesses. So this might be what's going on as well. The fact that, well, women are getting more university degrees more than men, it doesn't mean that they are outperforming men in society or anything like that. Men might be their employers. They might be pursuing um, enterprises, entrepreneurial ventures really early, and they might be the ones ending up employing women with these university degrees. That is not to say that women don't pursue entrepreneurial uh, ambitions as well, right? Women are starting businesses as well, but more likely for women to start businesses in their 40s after they've obtained university degrees, obtained a sufficient capital and experience. In any event, I'm going to stop this video now, and I'll continue in a subsequent video on the accomplishments of uh, Alice Paul with respect to uh, achieving equal rights for women. My name is Osha, and I'll keep you posted.